I think we discussed about the scorecards in our respective HR WhatsApp group. So one scorecard that was left out, you can see here, it's called as People Capability Maturity Model. Now this model is also used to appraise an organization. So we have if you look at the term maturity model, so there are maturity levels, level 1, level 2, so on to level 5. So as and when the organization performs, we put the organization in level 1 or level 3 or level 5. So depending on that, the appraisals are done. It could be this maturity model. I can use it for departments as well to appraise the department. So which level are we into and which level we can go for, and so on. Now ultimately this is again a scorecard which is used for performance management process in the organization. Now this is derived from capability maturity model. So thus the word people, in the sense the human resource, is added to the existing model. Just to go through the slide there, PCMM model is a maturity framework that focuses on continuous improving the management and the development of human assets in an organization. Now, it helps organizations successfully address their critical people issues. Now, as I said, it is used to check the maturity level of the work practices in the organization, in the sense the HR practices, the functions in the organization, the practices, the policies. So somewhere to enhance or to improvise or to establish the culture of excellence, this PCMM model is used in an organization. So PCMM model framework is the first initiative to bring an institutionalization, we call it as well established standard based approach to build the HR framework for the organization. Now what this word institutionalization means is, when we implement this people capability maturity model, there are certain 5 levels. So as and when the organization moves from level 1 to level 5, by the time we reach level 5, we have reached the level where the practices are applied, consistency is brought in, effectiveness is improved, okay, and somewhere we have benchmarked the processes, we have put the standards for every process. That level, what we do is we institutionalize, in the sense we put it in the formal way. Now, this is how the HR practices have to run, whether it is a crisis situation or it could be the booming situation. Now PCMM model has helped to put up these HR framework for an organization when it comes to institutionalization. Now scaling of PCMM ladder is to be done. Now as I said, there are 5 levels. So somewhere PCMM model takes an organization to the progressive steps in order to develop the different practices that are there in the organization. So the scaling varies from level 1 to level 5. Now here I've just listed certain levels. You can see there, the first one, the level 1. The level 1 is what? Some HR practices are there in the organization and there is no consistency. Now you understand the word consistency, that we don't do it in a regular way or regular intervals, but yes, there are HR practices, in the sense that organization is at level 1 when it comes to PCMM model. Okay, now I spent another 3 years running this existing HR practices, but there are no consistency. Now what I do is I spend the next 3 years in order to bring that consistency of whatever practices that I had. Okay, one, I bring the consistency. I try to repeat the practices or the functions or the processes that have done with respect to the HR functions. Yeah, I replicated those practices, and then if I appraise my organization practices, I fall under level 2. Why? Because I have brought in some consistency. Of course I have HR practices, yeah, I have repeated those HR practices and felt it can be replicated, in the sense I am able to apply it elsewhere if any situation arises. In that situation we are into level 2. Now level 3 is very important. Of course there are HR practices and you have brought in the consistencies. The most important thing that happens in level 3 is we bring in the word competency management. Very important. Here what we do here is we try to bring in competencies in every HR practices that we develop in the organization. In the sense, competency based recruitment, competency based training, yeah, competency based compensation. So I don't recruit people just based on the requirement or just based on the profile of the vacancy that is available. Instead, I identify the competency that are required to fill in that position in an effective way, isn't it? Now training is also based on competencies. Competency based training is given. I identify the competencies and I give the training to the employees only on developing those competencies. In the sense, we are very specific when it comes to level 3. Now if I'm having all such practices wherein I bring that competency everywhere, results everywhere, specificity everywhere, then we are, that particular organization is into level 3. Now level 4 looks a little higher for any organization. Like, we say the emergence of an organization into capability management framework. So here what we do is we try to bring in a lot of freedom or empowerment in the processes that we follow in the organization. And the most important thing here is whatever the people practices we do in HR department or HR function, that has to be integrated with the business processes. In the sense, we are becoming the partners in business processes, strategic partner what we call. Yeah, so somewhere having this strategic human resource management in an organization puts that company into level 4. Now here we also try to correlate between the HR practices, the people practices, with respect to that of business practices. If I hire somebody, if I do competency based recruitment, what this competency based recruited candidate help me in achieving this business process. Okay, if at all I've invested something on my competency based training, what is the return on investment, and is that return on investment gaining something to me with respect to business processes? So we are trying to correlate. Now if this correlation is found to be strong, then we say that organization falls under level 5, sorry, level 4. Now comes the level 5. If you look at level 5, what we do is a lot of improvements you can see here with respect to the practices. You try to create change, putting in places various workforce practices, so new things would be added here. Now whatever you do, everything is documented, finely documented, all your competency based HR practices, your institutionalized processes, so everything is properly documented. And the last step, and when it comes to level 5, is institutionalization of these practices. Now what is institutionalizes? Institutionalize is all about, I have the practices, I have brought in the competence, sorry, inconsistencies, and all the practices are based on my competency based HR practices in the organization. I have repeated, replicated, I have improvised on it, I have worked for the improvement, and it is completely standardized. Lot of empowerment was brought in, lot of results were there, lot of effectiveness was seen in the process. Now what I do is I have documented it properly because it was successful in implementing these HR practices in my organization. So once this happened, we institutionalize, saying that these are the centralized HR practices or core HR practices or people practices in an organization. So every other subsidiary is supposed to follow it. Now if we are practicing this level, we call them as level 4. Now this is again the 4 levels. Now the question comes, how are we going to measure it? Yeah, now this is the way how you measure it. You have the metrics there, some HR practices inconsistency, that's a way to measure level 1. Some consistency is brought in, repeated, replicated, we put it in level 2. Yeah, we bring in competency based practices in the company, we put it as level 3. And if you have something called as empowerment, and there is linkage between people process and business process, and you're able to correlate, then you put that organization into level 4. Level 5, if you have maintained the documents perfectly and it was implemented and successful, we finally get into institutionalization, we put it in level 5. Now organizations, it's not so easy to go from level 1 to level 5. initial level, when the organization just starts with their HR practices, installing the HR practices, they may spend around 4 years just to establish the practices in the company. That is, they are in the level 1. Okay, so level 1 itself will take 4 years, 4 to 5 years for any organization to develop certain systems that are acceptable by most of the employees in the organization, isn't it? Now level 2, so level 2 might take another 3-4 years, yeah, to bring in that consistencies, a lot of attrition could happen, the higher ups might change, the culture might change, isn't it? So accordingly we'll have to fine tune our practices or the policies in the organization. So level 2, reaching to level 2, maybe it may take another 8 years in total, yeah. And level 3, a very difficult job again for any organization, to get into competency based practices. Maybe in the coming modules you'll be studying the competency based HR practices, how are competencies identified, how are they assessed. So very very tedious job in an organization, but yes, if you practice this, then the effectiveness is too very, pretty good. That's how they say level 3, reaching level 3 in PCMM model is pretty difficult again. So another 10 years I can put it here, so probably 15 years the organization's level reach the level 3, and then level 4, level 5, another 20 years I can say. Now why I'm saying this years is, understanding the levels 1 to 5 is very easy, but then for an organization to go from level 1 to level 5, it takes years for them, to get into that level. So this is how the standardization of HR practices in the organizations, and what you can say, appraising of HR practices or policies in the organizations are usually done. We don't say, after auditing is done using this PCMM model, we don't say the practices are best or effective or not effective. Instead we say we are in level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. Look at it in the sense, we say, are we giving some empowerment, are we replicating, are we institutionalizing, are we improvising, yeah, have we brought some consistency, isn't it? Is there any effectiveness? This is how this PCMM model works. Now PCMM model is again derived from capability maturity model. It is called as CMM model. So CMM model is very generic. Now CMM model concentrates on appraising the entire organization. Now here PCMM model, what we do is we get into departmental, what I can say, departmental assessment, or it could be a single department's assessment. Now how we did for the HR department using the PCMM model, similarly I can use PCMM model for every other department in order to appraise them. Okay, so PCMM model is more focused, I can say, focused on the organization's workforce. Why? Because we use the word people, yeah. So human resource capability maturity model. So somewhere they say PCM model is open architect than just maturity levels in CMM model. CMM model will just give you the levels, but the people capability maturity models, with the levels, they tell you how do we achieve that level, okay, and how are we going to measure it. So that is the beauty of this PCMM model. So this is all about the scorecard called as PCMM model. Thank you. Well guys, good afternoon. We will enter into the next module, that is performance counseling. Now in your course outline of mine, if you look at it, you have module 3, which speaks about performance counseling and mentoring. If you remember, we had seen the documentary on performance appraisal and counseling. So at the start of my class, which was of 1 hour duration, so you will have to connect the concepts of performance counseling back to the video of Mr. Vivek, who underwent the appraisal process, who faced many problems with respect to his boss, and now when Vivek becomes a boss, how he changes the way the performance counseling is done. He takes the help of a psychologist, isn't it? He tries to understand how the feedback is to be given, and is found to be a successful appraiser. And in that video we also saw how are we going to counsel a person who has performed very well, outperformed, what we call. And we have also seen a person, how do we counsel a person who has underperformed. underperformed, a very experienced person and a aged employee. So how are we going to handle it? Now if you recall back all those the video, 1 hour documentary which we saw, it will really help you all to understand this concept called as performing counseling. I will just quickly run through the word performance counseling and little bit of brushing up of the concepts. Yeah, to begin with, performance counseling is quite often, it is misunderstood. We always feel counseling is all about what? Correcting, controlling somebody's behavior. That is what is the counseling is thought of. But again, in the general definition, counseling is what? I some people go to counseling, have a counseling session, because somewhere we feel that we are unwell. Something is disturbing us, so we would like to undergo those counseling session. So what happens in counseling session? The counselor, she will ask you a few questions: why, what happened, how it happened, isn't it? And we go on narrating the things. And once we narrate the things, she might help you out to sort out the things. Yeah, and then certain alternatives are given, suggestions are given, and finally the session ends by a positive note telling you that things are better and this is how you can do things like that. Now that is the general meaning of counseling. Now here, performance counseling is a little different terminology. You can say here, performance counseling focuses on entire performance. Now when I say entire performance, I am not just seeing your task, I am not just seeing your assignments, I am not just seeing your projects. Okay, I am seeing your behavior as well. Isn't it most relevant these days? Yes, guys. Yeah. So somewhere performance counseling, it is focusing more on your task as well as behavior. A person has wonderfully executed his task project, but then there is a lot of concern with respect to his behavior. The way he behaved when he was achieving that particular task, when he was achieving that particular project, behavior was not acceptable. I can't say that the person is best because his task is done. No, organizations bother a lot when it comes to behavior, so we will have to monitor our behaviors when we are working in the organization. So performance counseling concentrates more on task as well as the behaviors, and here we are not concentrating on a problem. Like counseling, what we say, the clinical counseling, I have a pain in my leg, so I meet a doctor counsels me. Yeah, he tries to give the solution to the leg pain I had. There was a problem specific. But whereas performance counseling is not that. Performance counseling is just a discussion counseling process which happens in order to check your job, what all you have done, and what was your behavior then, how can we improvise on your behavior, what can be changed in you. Yeah, so things like that. So all this is discussed during the performance counseling session. So here what we do is, ultimately we are trying to analyze the performances and the job behaviors in order to bring that effectiveness in the job that an employee does in an organization. Now this performance counseling is called as a dyadic process because interactions happen between two people. Now who are two people here? The employee, counselee, who is sitting there, yeah, and the employer or the counselor. Okay, so these are the two people who sit together and discuss about the job related behaviors, improvisation methods, yeah, suggestion methods, what next can be done, the future plans, the growth. So everything is discussed during the performance counseling session. Now this is also called as coaching. So usually we have two words, you remember, coaching and mentoring. So under counseling, coaching and mentoring falls, they say. And coaching, as you all know, it's a short term process and it is used for a short term suggestion, short term counseling process. We use coaching. If I'm doing a counseling for a longer term, I refer it to as mentoring. So in mentoring, what I do, I speak about your career, I speak about your personal growth, I speak a future, about the future for you, down the line 5 years, down the line 10 years. But coaching concentrates on this 3 months, how can I improve your skills, this 2 months, what good I can do for you, what new training program I can add to you, right? And that is again the coaching. So usually performance counseling, we call it as a coaching, coaching method. There are usually a confusions between the performance counseling and the clinical counseling. Now you see, clinical counselings are problem specific. We have any problem we go to a doctor, isn't it? Now, and moreover, here in clinical counseling, what is happening? Self is important. If I have a problem, then only I will go, or else I wouldn't, isn't it? Why should I visit a doctor? Always meeting a doctor is what? Little negative, isn't it? Complexity, if you look at it, it's very less. Leg pain, hand pain, some mental issues, we go talk to them, sort it out. But whereas performance counseling, it's a regular continuous process that should happen in an organization. And this performance counseling is organization initiated. Companies will take the initiation on running these processes. Yeah, and this is more complicated when it comes to complexity, because we are not only coaching the employees, we are developing them, allowing them to grow, giving them certain career path, isn't it? Now this is all about the performance counseling. I hope you're getting the difference between the clinical counseling and the performance counseling. Now, there are some confusions with respect to two terminologies here. One is counseling and performance evaluation. Counseling, as I said, it is current. We speak about current performance, how you did this, why you did this, how best you can do it. In the future, you can do it in a better way. How can you do it? I give the suggestion. Now, that is counseling process. Whereas performance evaluation, I just check your past performance. Last year, what all you did, how did you do, who helped you, who didn't help you, isn't it? Now that is again performance evaluation. Whereas counseling is a frequent process. Every now and then I would like to have certain counseling process for my employee because I want to improve his performance, isn't it? Yeah. Now whereas performance evaluation is infrequent, that's what is the difference. So you will have to understand the difference between evaluation and the counseling process. Counseling speaks about current and the future, whereas performance evaluation speaks of the past performances. Now the question comes, why at least we have to get into counseling process? Okay. Now if I want to understand, if I am an employee, now if I undergo this counseling process which my immediate boss does, I will be able to understand my own strengths and weaknesses related to job, isn't it? I might you know I might acquire certain information, or I may get into analyzing my own behavior, which is acceptable at times, which is not acceptable sometimes, isn't it? Now better understanding of the work environment that I'm working, if I want to improvise my interpersonal skills and interpersonal effectiveness with my boss, I'll have to open up myself and say, this is how I am, and what are your feedback about me, isn't it? Now if my boss wants to encourage me, motivate me, put me certain new goals, he has to get into this counseling process. Now if he wants to suggest me, he wants to give me a growth, give me a career, for him, if he wants to achieve his goal, he'll have to motivate me, he'll have to develop certain action plans for my improvement, isn't it? Now if you want to have all this, counseling should happen. Counseling is beneficial for employee and the employer. Employee, because we are getting insight about our own behaviors, our own jobs, our own, how we are, our own performances, our own strengths and weaknesses. Okay, as an employer, you are also achieving your organizational plans through the counseling process. You are inputting or imbibing certain expectations from the employee. Now that's how, or that's why counselings are done in the organization. So it's ultimately rapport building, bringing in that communication gap, reducing that, improvising the interpersonal skill, developing the open culture, openness, allowing people to work, bring in that growth, development, lot of empowerment, and having a lot of performances, effective performers in an organization, they get into counseling process. Now uh, uh, if you want to have an effective counseling process, there are certain conditions. If you go back to the video which I'd shown to you all, you saw that the Vivek's boss was having a lot of disturbances, the phone call, the TV that he was watching, the cricket match he was watching, isn't it? And always bragging about himself and trying to put the employee down. So all those are the don'ts. Now what are do's? Okay, what are the requirements? First and foremost, you should have a climate of openness. You should create such an environment, such a rapport, such a initial start, that employees start opening up with you all, and say, this is what it is, this is my actual performance, why am I not able to perform. When you bring in that openness, you will actually get the facts, the actual facts, bitter or whatever facts we call, that comes out when you have that open environment. The second thing is, you are supposed to be helpful and empathetic. Self-explanatory again. Now, one important thing here is, this counseling process should be more of goal setting and performance oriented reviews. It should not be a general discussion, hi, how are you, you're really good, your behavior is wonderful. No, goal setting, performance review should be done. We should concentrate more on work oriented behaviors, work related difficulties, work related problems, work related issues, how to sort it out. Yeah, how can we improvise on the things. And so ultimately what we have to do is, we will have to concentrate only on improving the things, developing the things, isn't it? And one important thing that we have to avoid are discussions on our salaries, the recognitions, the rewards, talking about other employers feedback. So all this has to be avoided. These are the conditions for effective counseling process in the organization. Now, in the coming slides, I will tell you types of counselings that exist in an organization. The first thing you can see there, it's called as directive counseling. Now, directive counseling, the word itself, directive. So we know why we are getting into this counseling process. So what we do here is, one, you verbalize the goal for an employee, yeah, and you set a realistic what you can say, expectations for the employee. You tell him what could be, or you identify the problems or that the employee could face. You also try to resolve it, and you also tell him how to control those blocks. You identify certain potential sources of help for him. You outline the options for an individual. You finally give your positive expectations about the counseling. So what we do here is direct counseling. You tell him, see boss, this is what is expected. These are the problems that you would face. Now for this problem, this is the solution. Yeah. You also helped him. If you want any sources of help, these are the different sources you can reach us out. Okay, you can reach any individual, any resources. I will give you enough, resources. Now ultimately, I want you to perform, okay, in a positive way. We set certain goals and come out of it. Now that is again the directive counseling. The second type of counseling you can see here, it's called as subordinate centered communication. Now subordinate centered is, more time is given for the subordinate or the employee to speak. Here the employee takes an active role in the session, and he maintains responsibility for his own actions. So here what we do is, three things happen in the subordinate centered counseling process. First thing is active listening. As a counselor, you will have to listen what your employee is trying to say, because in the subordinate centered counseling, what happens, the counselee is a center of attraction. He is allowed to speak. Yeah, once you do the listening process, you get into responding, not reacting, responding. Okay, once you respond to his problems, issues, and of course help that he require, finally you get into questioning mode. What if it was not there? What if I don't provide you? Okay, in a positive way we take the sessions. So here three things happen: active listening, responding to the employee, and you try to question the employee and finally give certain suggestions. Yeah. So these were the two different types of counseling: directive counseling and the subordinate centered counseling. Now most of the organizations, when they want the employees to do something, the task to be done, we get into directive counseling. When most of the problems are there in the organization with respect to their behaviors, things like that, we get into subordinate centered communication process. Now when you saw in the video, it was more of directive counseling, but later when you saw the behavior of that old man, experienced person in an organization, it was more of subordinate centered counseling process. Now when we speak about counseling, what exactly happens in the counseling process? There are three things that happen when counseling is on. The first thing, if you look at it, it's the communication. The first thing what we have to do is, we will have to communicate. How are you going to communicate? So whenever the counseling process starts, it always starts with your listening skills. You will have to listen. Now, before listening, you have to allow the employee to speak, isn't it? Now, if you want to employ, if you want an employee to speak, you will have to initiate the discussion, isn't it? Now, if you want the discussions to open up, you will have to create that environment, right? So somewhere it all starts with initiating. You will have to initiate the discussion in a positive manner, in a positive space. Give that open space for the employee, making comfortable, build that rapport with an employee. So once that ice breaking is done, you get into listening. Please listen to a person, listen what they are saying. So once listening is done, we get into responding mode. So once you respond to the problems or the issues that the employee is raising, and then try to give the feedback. So the first thing that happens in counseling process is communication. We are communicating. We, in the sense, as I said, counseling is what? It's a dyadic process. Both employee and the counselor are speaking. So both are supposed to speak here. Now if both speak, then only the counseling process can be effective. So once you listen, thoroughly, you try to give feedback. The second level of counseling, what we call, is helping mode. We try to help the employee. Now how do I help the employee? You can see that the first one is empathy. Most of us know it, right? Understand what he's facing, what are his problems, how it could be sorted out, any other alternative solutions. Ask the employee himself, okay, you don't want to do this, tell me what else you can do. Employee will obviously say, no, we'll go with whatever you say, isn't it? Empathetic mode, which we used in organization behavior, isn't it? So empathetic mode, you have to get into that, and then give certain developmental plans for the employee. Tell him that this is what I'm expecting from you. So once the developmental plans are given, you will have to get that mutuality into practice. The employee has to agree for it. So mutual understanding between you and your employee should happen in stage 2. So you are empathetic, you are developing plans for him, you are bringing that mutuality in the plan. So that is again the second stage of counseling, called as helping. So once you get into second mode, what you have done in second mode is you have given a bigger plans, right? Bigger picture. Of course mutuality is taken, but still the person would be having that, why should I do? It's so difficult. Something new has come, right? Lot of difficulty. How can you do? How should I do? Why should I do? Time is less, I can't perform, I may not perform. All insecurities will be there. Now to break that insecurity, we get into influencing mode. Now what happens in influencing mode? Identification, autonomy, positive reinforcement. Identification is what? You help him to identify certain resources to do this, achieve this developmental plans. I give certain identification of resources, identification of sources. I try to help him. Not only the sources, I also help him to identify the upcoming problems. I forecast the problems, I give the solution. Isn't it very interesting, right? I forecast the problems, I give the solution to him. I forecast what are the resources required, I give him a solution. So once that is done, you try to give him freedom. Now freedom has to be given. Do whatever you want, but this is what is the development plan. These are what the problems you might face. These are the sources available for you. Use these resources. But I will give you that empowerment. Now go execute the task. Now, once you leave the hall, you should give that positive reinforcement, which we discussed in perception, organization, behavior, reinforcement, right? Rewards, recognition, positive words. So, all those are called as positive reinforcement in the counseling process. So whenever counseling process happens, these are the four stages we'll have to go if we are a successful counselor. So initially communicate, initiate the discussion, rapport building, then listen to what the employee is saying, try to give the feedback, respond to him in a positive way, and then get into the helping more, understand his problems, give him the developmental plans or the future plans, also bring in that mutuality between you and your employee, and finally you'll have to influence him by giving the positive reinforcement. Now that is all what happens in the counseling process. Now this is a clear understanding. The counseling process, you see, it always starts with rapport building, exploration, action, planning. All the three steps are very important, because rapport building is very important. Initially, if you don't attend to the employee, his personal, see, whenever we sit for counseling, slowly that you get into empathetic mode, personal talks will come. Employee might share, no, I'm facing problem with respect to my family. You can't say, don't, please, yeah, don't speak about your family, let's get into next point. There itself we are gone, counseling process is closed. So what we'll have to have is, we'll have to tell him that, yeah, I understand your problem, but we will have a certain different forum wherein we discuss your personal problem. Now why don't we get into your, you know office related work, which wherein your family is impacting you. Somewhere that way you try to attend the employee. And the next thing you see there, listening. So listening is very important. Now it's not just I just nod my head, okay, or I just say I'm listening to you, I'm listening to you. No, your physical posture will tell him whether you are listening to him or not. The eye contact that you're doing with him will tell you you're listening to him or not. Yeah. So keeping out your telephones out, the noises out, disturbances away, that tells you whether you're listening to him or not, isn't it? So somewhere your physical posture as a counselor plays a very important role, which tells us whether you are listening to the employee or not. The next one you see there, acceptance. So acceptance is all about when an employee says, I'm facing a problem, my boss is like this. Accept it. Okay, you are facing a problem, let us listen. Okay, can you share your problem? Can you share your feelings, concerns? You'll have to once he shares, now you as a boss, okay, you as a counselor, you share your experience, whether it was there or not, but say, yeah, the similar thing happened to me, but how did I sort it out? This is the way I sort it out. Now you have to handle things that way. So if you bring in this way, you have already reached the level 1, that is the rapport building. You are successful in doing this. Yeah. Attending, listening, acceptance. Attending is all about the conversation that you start with. Listening, your body language, the way you respond is about listening. Acceptance, whatever employee, acceptance again, empathy. Employee starts, whenever we sit with an employee talking to him, he always starts with his problems, right? So you should be a little empathetic. Excuse me. You need to be a little empathetic, then you are able to accept it. So once the rapport building is done, we get into the next stage. You can see the exploration is all about diagnosis is again identifying the problems that the employee is happening. So whenever exploration happens, it starts with exploring in the sense, you put an open question to him. How are you performing these days? How are you doing these days? Yeah, open questions. So when you open a question, what happens is all the things starts coming up. Yeah. Now next what you have to do is, you have to get into problem identification. How do you do it? You need to question them to explore the possible problems. You will have to question him, okay, then he will tell you the problems. You will have to encourage him, so that he himself will tell you the solution. And then you have to tell him, why don't we identify the probable problem in the future? He will tell you that as well. So somewhere exploration stage is very important, because you are not alone with the employee. You are exploring the prospective problems. You are exploring the solutions also during the discussion. The next step, if you see, it's called as problem identification. So problem identification is, as you all know, it's all about identifying the uh, problems that are there in the organization. I'm so sorry, problems that the employees facing. Now we get into diagnosis is, we use certain tools and techniques in order to actually find the actual problem that the employee is facing. So exploring and problem identification, he would have already shared you the problem. So in case of diagnosis, what we do is, we use certain exploratory question, and we actually try to check and recheck whether that problem is existing or not. So in the diagnosis, we try to identify whether the problem is existing or not, and then we use certain tools and techniques to actually identify the problem. The last point, if you see, it's called as action plan. So under action plan, the word itself tells we are trying to get into the solution mode. So solution mode, in the sense, you can see that the first one, searching, in the sense, what we do is we try to question the employee on the solutions here. So when we question them, if this solution is not good, what would you do? So he'll give you the next solution, but still I say this also would not be better, what is your way out for this? He will give you solution number 3. So what happens here is you are generating alternative solution. That happens in action plan. And the next point, if you see, decision making. So what you have to do is you will have to whatever the solutions that the employee has given, you will have to discuss the pros and cons with him. If you implement solution number 1, what could be the pros, what could be the cons? Okay, similarly for solution 1 2 3 4 5, you will have to discuss and finally come to a conclusion that solution X was better. Discussion on solution X, and you say, in order to go for this solution X, what is your action plan? How can we go for this contingency plan? How do we achieve this? He will tell you, you also suggest him, and then come up with the plan. The last step is called as supporting. Supporting is all about, you can tell him, you can identify any help that is required in order to execute the decision or the alternative that we have decided, or the solution that we have decided. You will have to tell him that you are going to monitor him with respect to resources, anything that is required, and finally you are always there to help him. This is how you can usually do this counseling process. Now counseling process, we say it as at 3 stages. Rapport building is very important because you are breaking that ice and allowing the employee to speak up, that openness is brought in, and then you get into 3 different modes that we discussed. Exploration is again all about identifying the problems. Okay, and then third important thing is action plan, nothing but identifying the alternatives. Among the alternatives, select one. With that one, you also discuss the pros and cons. You also tell him, if you implement this, how are you going to implement, what are the resources required, and then finally tell him, support him, saying that yes, we are there with you, resources we are there, sources you are there, we are there for you, and ultimately we can go for this discussion. End the counseling process with a positive note and allow the employee to go out of the room with a positive reinforcement. Now this is all about the counseling process. So if I want to just quickly go through this, we just discussed about difference between the normal layman's language counseling and performance counseling. Most importantly, as I said, counseling has two terminologies, coaching and mentoring. Short term coaching, long term is again mentoring. And we discussed about the difference between the clinical and performance counseling. Difference between performance counseling and performance counseling and performance evaluation. Yeah, then ultimately why counseling helpful for both manager and the employee, ultimately for the organization. Now conditions for effective counseling was discussed, that is the pros for a better counseling process. Two types of counseling, directive counseling and the subordinate centered counseling. Again, organizations choose type of counseling depending on the problem or the need of the company. And then these are the constituents of counseling. So whenever counseling process happens, these 3 stages has to happen in the process: communicating, helping, and then influencing. So end of the counseling process, it always ends with a positive reinforcement, and then most importantly your counseling process. So rapport building, exploration, action, planning. So this is all about performance counseling, guys. Thank you so much for watching me out. Have a good day.